Hey folks, welcome to the What the Futures podcast, where we break down complex market trends into simple, actionable advice. It's your quick guide to better farming decisions. Hey there, folks. Welcome to episode number 26 of the What the Futures podcast. I hope you're having a great day. Of course, I'm recording in the UPL studio here once again. The month of May, absolute great time of year. I know there's a lot of start, stop when it comes to planting crops here in 2024, with the exception of the peas. Now, those folks are going to finish first across the prairies, the way it's looking. A little bit strange, but anyways, great time of year. Episode 26. I'm titling this one, Grain Markets Hear the Rally Cry from Canadian Farmers. And we'll get to that in just a few moments. Now, of course, What the Futures is your weekly dose of clarity in the complex world of agriculture. I'm your host, Ryan Denis. I've spent my career working in agriculture. I was a grain buyer, grain marketing advisor, and analyst. Spent, essentially, what was it, 2009 into 2022 as part of the ag fabric here across the Canadian prairies, and taking the show on the road here with the What the Futures podcast. So welcome. Before we get into today's episode summary, I do want to take a moment and just wish, the women in our lives a very happy Mother's Day. All right. So to my darling wife, Chantal, happy Mother's Day. To my mom, Angel, happy Mother's Day as well. I have a funny feeling that my mom is going to spend the day on probably the sprayer. We'll see if she makes it over to the greenhouse as well. But, our family tradition on Mother's Day really involved the weather. I mean, if it rained or not. If it rained, full on Mother's Day experience. If it was a nice day, crops were getting planted. But anyways, take some time. I know it's busy on the farm here in the spring. But give those great moms out there just a little extra love. Maybe shut the machine down for a little bit, go out for a nice dinner, whatever you can do to help celebrate the moms in our lives. All right. Okay. So now the nuts and bolts of today. It's the most wonderful time of the year. And I'm not singing about Christmas, but it is spring. It is rally time when it comes to grain markets. Okay, so we're going to talk about that in a lot more detail. I've got Brett Waltz joining me from BAM WX. He's going to get us caught up on all things weather related, and it's a doozy of a segment. There's a lot of extreme weather to talk about, especially in the U.S. Now, UPL is giving away the first 40 acres of Batalium on today's episode, so we'll get to that here in a few minutes. And of course, I'll get to our regular segments, including the popular mailbag segment brought to you by Pioneer Seeds. And Patricia asks, what is possibly my favorite question of the year so far? So hang in, stay tuned. It's my favorite question because the answer could have a positive impact to your farming operation. Okay, so stay tuned for that. And of course, we'll wrap up with a healthy serving of veggies because, of course, folks, it is the right thing to do. All right. So, we'll just pause for a second here from a word from our sponsor, John Deere. Out here in Western Canada, we see a lot of different crop conditions. Fortunately, our friends at John Deere have a whole new lineup that can handle any crop in any condition. There's 3 new high horsepower 9RX tractors, a new high-tech S7 and X9 combines. There's even a new C Series air cart. Check them out for yourself at johndeere.ca. and see what's coming our way. Alrighty, folks, let's get after it here for today's episode. Of course, we start each and every week with our positive moments. Last week was awesome. It was my daughter in soccer and being on Team Ketchup versus Team Mustard. The update for this week, folks, is that there's like 11 kids playing. 9 kids would not wear yellow, essentially. They were wearing red, 2 kids in yellow, trying to play a game against each other. Phenomenal entertainment. Team Ketchup, heavily stacked against Team Mustard. But anyways, positive moments for this week. All right, so markets. It's rally time. The markets are hearing the rally cry. And it's positive because, hey, it's adding to your bottom line. Okay. And I know you're out there executing and you're making sales. And that's a super positive thing to be happening because you are adding to your bottom line. All right. My second positive moment of the week, I did get a shout out from an old client of mine on X, and it just made me feel good, to be honest. It was just a quick nod to the podcast and to some of our past work. And hey, I appreciate it, Martin. Thank you for putting that out there. You're my positive moment of the week. And then the last one is just the awareness that was created around that slow paying grain company, Agfinity, in this example. It's a positive moment because the situation itself is not positive. But it's a positive moment because through social media, and you may agree or disagree with this, but through social media, awareness was created and a statement had to be issued from Agfinity to everybody to say, hey, this is actually what's happening. We are 50 some days behind on payment, business days behind on payment. You add it all together, it's 90 days after delivery. But anyways, it's out there in the open now. So instead of the odd farm here and there talking about it and saying, hey, has anyone seen this? Like, I haven't been paid what I thought. Like, what's going on? It's now out there. There's awareness around it. Hopefully farmers now moving forward know that, hey, if I'm going to do business here, I'm going to get payment in 3 months. And when you sign on that dotted line, you know that that's when you're getting paid, and it's all up front and it's all, in the open now. And honestly, folks, it's not perfect, but it's positive because that is one of the things that social media can do is bring around these situations and scenarios. And hey, maybe it helped some farmers make some decisions as well. I don't know, but I'm going to put it as a positive moment because honestly, just the back and forth, not behind the back, but yeah, it was just very hidden, and now it's out there. Okay, so I'm putting that out as a positive moment. Now, my hot topic of the week, of course, last week was about licensed grain companies. This week it's back to talking about markets. Okay, and I want to just mention here, like back in March, I did a string of presentations. Okay, I got in front of some growers, and the presentations were not super positive. They were still, they had that negative bearish tone to them. Okay, they weren't, like super exciting and super positive. But what I kept highlighting in those presentations, well, there's a couple of things. Number one, and we'll talk about this with Brett, but the weather looked pretty extreme in the US. The forecast looked extreme. And so I did mention, hey, pay attention, maybe subscribe to US weather, or at least pay attention to the US weather. Okay. And I think it's going to be huge yet this summer. The second thing I talked about that stands out for me is how, short or how sold the funds were, or there's that bearish negative sold position. Negative's not the right word, but that sold position, that heavily sold position. I talked about how during this time of year, weather can rattle those folks, and you can see them get out of those shorts and either go neutral or potentially buy and go long. And that, history was showing us time and time again that as we got into, April, May, June, more often than not, like the cages would get rattled here, and you'd start to see some positive momentum and some rallies. And hey, here we are, folks. We're here. It's happening in front of your eyes. It's been happening the last couple of weeks, and it's awesome, right? So my hot topic here is that this is your time to shine. Okay, from a crop marketing perspective, this is when you're doing all the hard work. And more often than not, I should say, not all the time, but more often than not. And so you've got a bunch going on in the Northern Hemisphere. You even have a little Southern Hemisphere weather impacting market direction. Like, I'm not going to get so excited about Argentina and historic flooding, but, it's there. It's shaving off some production. So, but Northern Hemisphere, you've got, all this talk about Russia being dry in two key areas where they grow wheat crops. You've got slow U.S. corn planting, and Brett's going to talk about it with BAM-WX, but that kind of continues, over the next couple of weeks. For us in Western Canada, though, I would say the drought area has shrunk a whole bunch. There's actually not a lot of bullishness coming out of Western Canada itself on its own. In fact, a sense of relief for many that received moisture and precipitation. Okay. But you've got, or have seen some rain events now. Again, the crop's not made. We still need a lot more, but there's that confidence is slowly building. So this is your time to shine. I've been swamped with crop marketing over the last number of days here. And it's 23 crop, it's 24 crop, it's 25 crop. It's wheat more than anything, even a little bit of canola, figuring out strategies here, tidying up some old crop stuff. Yellow peas, have been on the agenda as well here. Some new crop targets triggering at $12. Like from a crop marketing perspective, it's been absolutely swamped. And I know last week I said, hey, sell some wheat. And so the episode's recorded on Wednesday. It goes out Friday. Monday, was it Monday you had a bump in the markets? Hopefully that all kind of worked itself together for you. And by the time you listen to it on the weekend and the Monday rolls around, you were able to do some selling. But it's a very important time of year. And you should be, in my opinion, you should be quite busy from a crop marketing perspective. You can lock in, again, defer to an expert out there, but there's futures that you can lock in. The CPS growers are just doing cartwheels in the field as they're filling the drill again. They're doing cartwheels because they're selling CPS for next year. Minneapolis spring wheat, there's some stuff there that makes sense too. And canola, it's getting a little closer anyway. So yeah, this is your time to shine from a crop marketing perspective. You should be, again, in my opinion, you should be having a lot of conversations right now with your grain buyers and the folks that are a part of your crop marketing plan. There should be a lot of active conversations happening. Maybe you're setting some targets, tweaking some of your goals. But it's look at that. I'm flustered. I have to catch up and drink water here because I'm so excited about this time of year. And you're going to say, well, Ryan, geez, man, we're planting crops. I'm busy. I'm busy planting a crop. And I totally get it. But as I said over the last couple of weeks, as grain marketing people, this is when they shine. As analysts, this is when they shine, and you're busy planting a crop, but more often than not, it's a time to be taking action as well. So, hopefully that, helps you out here a little bit. You don't have to run to the phone and get after it, instantly here. But, there's your crop marketing plan should be evolving and moving. And the rest of this episode is going to talk about that as well. But it's a lot of fun right now and starting to lock in some decent margins for some crops for next year. And it's busy. That's all I could say is it's very busy from a crop marketing perspective. All right. Let's turn it over now. I got Brett Waltz with BAM-WX joining me. Let's turn it over to Brett. All right, I've got Brett Waltz with BAM-WX joining us once again this week. Brett, how's it going over there? How's your week?
It has been a very busy week so far here. I know we're going to get into some of the forecasts for the United States here, but it has been just a crazy, really past 7 days in terms of severe weather. So it's been busy. It's been fun, tiring, but I enjoy it too.
Yeah, I messaged you last night, and then I was looking at the weather. I'm like, I think he's pretty busy. So we'll see if we get together today or not. So I appreciate you taking some time for us.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've got a little bit of a interesting story from this morning. So of course I've been using the Clarity app and enjoying it for our farm. And I'm in a group chat with three of my buddies, and they're avid rain, watchers, or it's very specific. They're very intense about
Yeah.
how much rain they received. So we had a great rain event across the prairies. And at my place, I think it was 1.7 inches. I don't even have the gauge out anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
So I got about 1.7. Anyways, they were asking each other, like, what did you get? And so they're going to check gauges. And I'm on the app, I'm just clicking away, taking screenshots saying, well, John, you got this, and Brad, you got that, and Scott, you got this. And, within just seconds, I was like, this is what you guys got. And it was funny because they were chasing around, checking gauges. So it was good.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the most important things I think when we were designing the platform is that we've got to have something that people can go around and look at observed rainfall because it saves so much time, money on some people buy super expensive rain gauges too. And everyone is calibrated a little bit differently. And if you set it up in a spot that has, somewhat close to a building or, if you're in a field versus a valley versus so many different variables. And so just to kind of put it all in one platform just makes it so much easier.
And honestly, for me, I've been, from a crop marketing perspective, I've been looking over, watching Kansas closely, checking those rainfall totals, those weather events. It's been really handy for me to see that. So anyways, I thought that was funny this morning. Yeah. Checking what we got. Okay. I want to turn our attention here to U.S. weather and planting delays. Is there cause for concern for planting delays?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think that there is some cause for concern. It's not really from a temperature perspective. In fact, I think temperatures the next couple of weeks are about as normal as you can really get. I mean, there's some small ups and downs, some warm ups, some cool downs, just typical spring stuff, but nothing crazy warm or crazy cold. That being said, the issue that we've had is just these persistent storm systems. I don't think it's quite as active over the next few weeks. The plains especially will have some opportunity over the next week or so. Okay. But especially for the Midwest, the Eastern Ag Belt, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, down through Kentucky, just kind of that portion of the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Midwest, there's just not a lot of dry time. We've had clients reaching out, hey, when am I going to have a 5-day dry stretch? When am I going to have a 4-day dry stretch? It's just been so wet. We need some time to dry things out. And we're just not going to have a lot of that. It may not be as excessively wet the next 2 weeks, but in terms of actual dry stretches where there's no moisture, it's just going to continue to be really challenging to come by, I think, for a lot of folks. And so plains may be a little bit better off the next 7 to 10 days, but still not completely dry. Really a little bit more concerned if folks haven't been able to get planting done further off to the north and to the east. There could be some more issues in there. So not the worst we've ever seen, but certainly not the best either, not ideal.
Okay. Yeah, I was following along on X and a few people were saying, hey, there's supposed to be this window here of dryness to plant, but it's not showing up on my forecast. So where is this window? So yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep a close eye on that. In my opinion, I'm the farthest thing away from a weather expert, right? But from my opinion, your weather in the U.S. looks intense to me. And our thoughts are with those that are affected and experiencing this intense weather, damaging weather. Am I out to lunch here, or is this a little more intense than normal?
Yeah, it's definitely a little more intense than normal. It's not, I wouldn't just call it your normal spring weather. I think it was like the first EF4 tornado down in Oklahoma in several years. Now they've had 2 just in the past week, which very intense tornado, a ton of damage. Michigan, into Michigan, it's unusual to get strong tornadoes up there, and they had multiple yesterday that caused damage. And so I think we've had something crazy like over 1,000 severe weather reports just since the start of May. It's the 8th day of May. So it's extremely active right now from a severe weather standpoint. Probably one of the more active springs, April and into May, that we've had the past several years. And I would attribute that to the kind of atmospheric whiplash we're getting right now, going from a strong El Nino to potentially a moderate La Nina as we work later into this year.
And so does this pattern, does it continue for a while then, or what do you see in that? regarding?
Yeah, great question. I think that maybe the next couple of weeks could at least be not quite as crazy. I don't think we're completely out of the woods, but it's not as extreme, not as over the top. That being said, I think that as we work into the very end of May and into June, it starts to ramp back up, but in a little bit of a different manner. Right now, we're kind of dealing with big low pressure systems. We're dealing with a lot of tornadoes, a lot of very large hail events. I'm concerned that as we work into the summer months, especially across parts of the Central Plains and into the Ohio Valley, maybe it could include Iowa and parts of the upper Midwest in that as well. At times, I'm concerned about those severe diving storm clusters that you kind of see across the central portion of the country. A lot of times those produce big wind events. I hate to use the derecho term, but I could see the potential for a couple of those this summer. When you go back and you look at years that kind of went pretty quickly into a La Nina through the summer months, they tend to have more of those types of storm clusters and storm systems. And so based off some research, and we are going to talk about it in our webinar, I know we'll get to that later next week, I see above normal severe weather potential this summer for a lot of folks in the Ag Belt in the United States.
Okay. All right. Great insight there. If we turn our attention to the north now, to where I live in the Canadian prairies, it's been, we had a great rain event here the last couple of days. Now I say great for us because it's been dry where I live, but for some of my friends up in the Peace region, they didn't get any rain yet. For some areas of southern Manitoba, it's been a little bit too wet. I would say it seems like that's the trend out there. It's a little too wet. What's the last half of May look like for the Canadian prairies?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. First off, kind of in terms of temperatures, the next couple of weeks are, again, similar to the US, not terribly warm. I would say probably you're leaning warmer than normal, but not hot, not getting early season heat necessarily. But in terms of precipitation, I'm just going to kind of pull up the map. I think that where you're at, you start to get late in the month, maybe some of those storm cluster type of deals in far southern Canadian prairies. And then it's further off to the north where you maybe could be and continue to be a little bit drier. With that being said, again, I don't see it overall where you all are at up there and in, through the Canadian prairies as an excessively wet or an excessively dry pattern anywhere. To me, those bigger dry threats are in the far southern tier of the United States, probably the southwestern portion of the country. And the more excessively wet conditions are where it's been maybe more excessively wet across the central part of the United States. Again, severe weather opportunities. So for you all, it's not crazy one way or the other. I don't think it's extreme heat and a big drought developing. I don't think we see a repeat of last year across Canada where there were wildfires all over the place. But it's also not excessively wet. And so I think it's about as normal as you can really get. I don't think that when all is said and done, there will be too much to complain about. Now, if you need a little extra rain, like you mentioned, maybe won't get to even things out. If you've been in a deficit, you may not get back to quote unquote normal. But I don't think you're necessarily going to be hurt, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And, when I look at the long range forecast in the app, that's quite consistent with what you guys have been putting out there as well. It's fairly, there's a lot of normal that comes up, fairly normal. So, and for us, we'll take a year of normal after what we had last year, I would say. And, my cruel joke, I was doing presentations in March. And for the province of Alberta, the government created a team dedicated towards the drought that we were going to have in 2024, and making sure the resources were there and available. And again, I say this it's a little bit of a cruel joke because I kind of joked, well, if the government's finally getting organized for this, we're not going to have a drought in 2024. So, anyways, here we are, in southern part of the province just had another, north of 2 inches in some of these areas that were very dry the last couple of years. So, yeah,
for sure. And again, I think you could attribute some of that to La Nina, because normally you have a little bit of a stronger northern jet stream in La Nina years, which can, at the very least, help you all out.
All right. So, we covered a lot already. And I've been, bugging producers, everyone wants to stay in tune with what's going on with the weather, but I've been bugging producers to make sure they keep an eye on the South in the US, because again, we talked about some extremes. We talked about lots of stuff going on. What do you have coming up in the summer, the webinar next week? How can people check into that? And when is it?
Yeah, so the webinar is next Wednesday, so a week from today. We're recording this on May 8th. So May 15th, it's 11 a.m. I know that's kind of early in the morning for some of you all out west, or around lunchtime around here. But if you can't watch it live, you can watch it recorded. And that's going to be at bamwx.com/webinar. Free to sign up, no cost of admission. Just trying to educate people and help them as much as we can for the season ahead. And as far as what we're seeing, I think it's a busy summer. I really do, because I think that, again, severe weather, I think that is an issue.
Yeah.
I think for the United States, it could be one of the hottest summers on record. I really do. Now, I don't think drought is as big of a concern as what we had last year. Obviously, Canada and into parts of the upper Midwest and even the Great Lakes dealt with drought conditions last year. Northern Iowa and southern Minnesota still kind of recovering from that, finally starting to catch up over the past couple of months.
Yeah.
But I think heat is definitely a problem. I think warm overnight low temperatures are a problem. I know that if you think back to a year like 2010, that caused some issues for people when you have really warm overnight lows with disease and whatnot. So that's something we're going to cover. And then I think we have to watch late in the season too, how will tropical activity influence the pattern? Because right. I think it could be a very, very active tropical season. And even though that's down on the Gulf Coast, that will impact the weather across the Ag Belt. It will impact late in the season, August into September. Mm-hmm. And that'll be something that we touch on as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces for this webinar, and a lot of risk we're going to talk about and really kind of fine-tuning the specifics as we work into summer 2024.
Perfect. Well, folks, you heard it there. May 15th, 11 a.m. Central. That's correct?
11 a.m. Eastern.
11 a.m. Eastern. All right. And on May 15th, head over to BAMWX, to their website, and get registered for that. So, Brett, thank you so much for joining us once again here on the What the Futures podcast. You're going to be a busy guy, man. I hope you have a great rest of your spring, and we'll definitely check in here next month.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Always great having him on the show. And I'll tell you, folks, if you get a chance, jump into that webinar next week, because there's a lot going on from a weather perspective, obviously. All right, let's move the show along to our, again, popular, once again, mailbag segment after a couple of quiet weeks. Of course, sponsored by Pioneer Seeds. This month, and actually, I think we're going to keep rolling with this over the next couple of months, but Maggie reached out here today, and we are giving away an Igloo 3-gallon bucket cooler. It doubles as a seat. So it's basically a really fancy lunch kit. From what I could see, it was a very fancy lunch kit. It doubles as a seat, which is great for in the field, and it can support 300 pounds, which means it's going to work for me. All right, folks. So it checks all the boxes. We're also going to give away the same package, a breakaway Bluetooth speaker, which splits into two. It basically covers more area in the room. And so all you have to do is email Ryan at whatthefuturespodcast.ca, and you'll get a chance to win that cooler and the speaker. Again, it's one package. We're going to draw for that each month here for the spring and potentially for summer as well. So the mailbag was full once again. I've got emails from Colin, Patricia, I've got Rick and Ryan on here as well. And so I'm going to start with Colin. I got to get you out of the way. Okay, buddy? Because Colin asks, or he states, wild oats keep me up at night. I'm sure people in drier areas have issues with kochia, but what is the long-term game plan? Can we keep stacking chem as really that's all we're doing, or do we have new real options coming? Now, those of you that have listened, this is episode 26. If you've been listening over the last number of months, I'm not the one to answer that, right? And so, Colin, I'm going to kick this one down the road. I'm actually going to get a couple of experts here to join me to talk about this topic. And we're going to dedicate a special episode on the side one day. It'll come out and it's going to cover this exact topic. So thank you for the question. You are going to get your name entered to win. But we're going to kick this one down the road. Okay. So I said at the beginning that Patricia's question got me super excited. My favorite question of the year. And here it goes from Patricia. Hey, I want to learn more about zero buyout, selling wheat, and want to ensure that if I ever had to buy anything out, I would be covered. Thanks. So great question, Patricia, because the options are far and few. Okay. So what can I do to avoid a buyout of a grain contract? And I've got a bunch of points here, folks. And this is just something that it's not that hard to do. It's actually quite simple to do. And I'm going to say at the start here, I'm going to talk about a few different companies and the options that they have. But I want you to reach out to them because, the contract may be similar, but just confirm the details with them and just make sure that you're on the same page. Okay. So here's my version. And again, always talk to your representative from these companies. So there's a few different ways, Patricia, that I look at this. And I look at levels of risk. So when you say that I want a zero buyout, your risk then is $0. And so that contract option is different than if you said, hey, I am willing to risk $1 a bushel. Okay. And so if we want to talk about the zero buyout, I'm going to mention Cargill at the top of this example, because they have a contract called a minimum price put. Okay. Now, this is not advice to go and buy these puts. I'm just stating what's on their website and some examples. And of course, reach out to those folks. So this minimum price put, this is buying a put option. Okay. Now, here's the thing with Cargill. You do not need to establish a basis or futures. And it used to be until 30 days prior to delivery. That is a point I would double check with them if I were you. Okay. So if you were delivering October 1st, you would have to set that by the end of August, the last day of August, 30 days prior to delivery. Okay. So you do not need to establish basis or futures. So if Minneapolis wheat is trading at $7.50, for example, on the December, you can buy a $7.50 put, a minimum price put. Okay. And in this example, let's say it's 50 cents. Easy math. I've been struggling with math this week, as you could see on X. So the maximum money or funds going out would be that 50 cents a bushel. So on a 10,000 bushel contract, your risk is $5,000. Okay. And you're going to say, well, Ryan, I said I don't want a buyout. Well, that's not a buyout. That is the cost of the option. Okay. Now that option has value until expiry. So when you, in this example, are not producing the crop, you would phone and say, hey, my crops, I'm not going to get it. We got hailed out. We have a drought going on, whatever it is. You can say, hey, I'm just going to sell back the put option I bought. What can I get for it? Then maybe you get $1,000, maybe you get $4,000, whatever. But that's your risk, okay, is buying this option. Now, if you don't establish futures or basis, then you don't have a buyout portion to this contract because you have not established basis. You have not established futures. All you have is a put, okay? And so that is your only risk currently. Once you establish a basis, though, then the buyout scenario comes into play. You've now committed to a portion of this contract. You've committed to a basis. If you do not produce that crop, then there is the potential for buyout fees and that buyout that you were mentioning earlier. Okay. Now, less risk than until you establish futures, but there's still that buyout risk and the cost associated with that. But you can establish, either side at any time. So if you never establish anything and don't produce the crop, you're just out the cost of that put. You're out the $5,000. As soon as you establish futures, then you're subject to a buyout potentially, right? If you don't produce it. Same thing with on the basis side. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If you produce the bushels, though, this is the most important part of this contract. Again, this is a Cargill minimum price put. But if you produce the bushels, you do need to deliver those bushels to Cargill. Okay, so it's not, you can't just walk away and say, well, I had the put, but anyway, I got the crop and I'm going to sell it over to my, the next elevator, whatever. You are committing those bushels. So if you produce it, you do have to deliver them. Okay. And to my knowledge, they're offering this on canola, spring wheat. I believe on Kansas wheat as well. Again, check with them. I went to cargillag.ca. That's the website. I'll quote it in the show notes. But that on that website, it's got all their contracts, everything, all the interesting things that they're doing over at Cargill. But for zero buyout, where you're sitting here and say, geez, I like the 750 Minneapolis. I like that. I want that. I'm worried about a buyout. You could phone them up, minimum price put, get that established, get a floor established, figure out basis and futures as your crop becomes a reality and as you get comfortable with marketing that crop. Okay. Now, if anyone from Cargill is listening and I have said anything that is not correct, please send me an email and I'll make sure to correct that in an email to the listeners or on the next show. Now, I'm also going to talk about Viterra now because they also have a minimum price contract, but there's a bit of risk to this one. Okay. Because you do need to add it or attach it to an existing contract. So let's say the price of wheat hit $8 a bushel in your area, and so you sold it at $8. But then our pal Mike Lee saw the frost event happening in Russia and said, "Hey, this is going to have an impact on wheat." I haven't spoke to him about it yet, so I'm just using that as an example. That's not a real quote. But you could phone up Viterra and say, hey, that $8 contract, there's something going on here. I think the markets are they're going to climb. You could add a call option to that contract. So, I should have said that in a different way, actually. Let's circle back for a minute and let's actually just use it against the buyout question that was asked earlier. That's more of like a speculation play. But let's say you sold $8 wheat and you said, okay, I like the $8. I want to take some of that $8, but I'm still, I don't know if I'm going to get a crop and I don't want to buyout. Well, you could attach a call option to that contract and maybe it's 50 cents in this example as well, where you're buying a call option. So now you're guaranteed a floor of $7.50 a bushel, but you've got some upside potential. So what happens in years of drought or years of production issues in Western Canada, prices climb, right? So you would sit here and say, well, geez, I sold at $8, but I bought my call option. And it would, in a way, help you by increasing in value in a rally. So if you bought it, a $8 strike, and I know this is getting more confusing as I keep talking here, and it rallied to $9, that call option could be worth 80 cents or whatever it's going to be. You take that 80 cents, add it to your contract, it would potentially reduce your buyout in that situation. And so it participates in upside. Okay. So there's a bit of risk there though, because it's not perfect. It's not dollar for dollar action or dollar for dollar gains. And so you might sit here and say, well, geez, it went from 8 to 10. I don't have the crop. My net price ended up being like $9.60. Well, you'd have a 40 cent buyout potentially in that situation, plus administration, so on and so forth. But that's actually a contract I've used a lot in the past, and I will guarantee I'll be using it again this year because I see prices rallying right now to levels that are starting to get to our break evens on the farm, or maybe slightly above our break evens. And I wouldn't be surprised if I'm trying to sell more wheat because I like the price and I like the margin, but still not confident in yield and just buying those call options to come in and help me in the case of a buyout. In 2021, I had those running on canola contracts. This would have been back at ADM. I don't think ADM offers that anymore. But we used funds that were generated from those call options, and we used it directly on buyouts. It happened. Again, it wasn't perfect, but yeah. Okay. Now, the other point I want to make to this is that there's a graphic out there, an image. You can kind of create this. I wrote box, but basically like your plus sign, right? You got your 4 quadrants or squares or whatever you want to call it. But you could say like, if I'm going to produce the crop, price climbs, produce the crop, price drops, don't produce the crop, price climbs, don't produce the crop, price drops. And you could actually set yourself these scenarios and work through these examples really well and really quite easily, okay, and figure out what you're comfortable with from a risk perspective. Now, for our farm, here's another example. But let's say I've got 20% sold right now, okay? So I've got 20% sold spring wheat, and the market climbs. I'm not comfortable selling anymore, but I like the price. I can go to, if my contract's at Cargill or my contract's at Viterra, I can go and I can attach a put option to that. I'm not committing any more bushels. I'm already using contracts that I have in place. I'm just saying, hey, I think the market's higher than it's going to be, later on this year. I want to protect this level, but I don't want to sell you anymore. Well, you can attach those puts. So now I've got 40% protected against downside, but I have 20% that has buyout risk. Just that original 20% has a buyout risk. The other 20% is just puts. Okay. Now let's say the price is rallying and I want to sell another 30%. Well, I can use a minimum price contract, participate in the strength of the market, and ease my worry of a buyout by buying that call option. So I'm going to do another 30%. So now I've got 50% sold. All right. I've got 20% hedged with that put option, which basically means that I've basically got now 70% hedged or with, no downside on price. So I'm sitting here with that. And now I've got 20% with a full buyout risk. I've got 30% with a minimal buyout risk because, again, I did the minimum price contract. I sold 30%, bought the call option to that. So there is some buyout risk there, but it's less. And then I have 20% on puts with no buyout risk. I honestly, folks, I could see that being a scenario for our farm this year that actually plays out, where we have some stuff sold with call options and some puts running as well. Yeah. So Pat, I love that question. I know that the response can be a little bit confusing at times. The folks at Viterra, again, same thing that I said to Cargill, if you're listening and saying, hey, dude, that wasn't exactly how it works, send me an email. But I've done quite a few of those contracts. And anyways, I think I'm pretty close. But Viterra, feel free to send me an email if I'm off base. And hey, if any of you want to join the pod and talk about it more, just let me know. We can see if we can line that up. So Patricia, thank you for the question. And those tuning in, I hope that that helped out just a little bit for your marketing plan this year. All right. Second question came from Rick. When you look at canola and wheat charts, do you see any cyclical trends like we used to see? And what are the new percent sold levels most recommended at what month or milestones in the year? So Rick, this is a bit of a tough, the second part's a bit tough, but the first part, when you look at these charts, again, I've been talking about seasonal trends, seasonal patterns. I believe we're entering a similar trend to crop marketing back in like 2015, 16, 17, where seasonals played a huge role in our marketing plans, where you had to take advantage of the unknowns in the Northern Hemisphere growing season to make sales. I believe in my feeling and my bones that is what we're looking at here for the next couple of years. I hope I'm totally wrong. I hope we get the next big bull run, and in that we get all the new highs moving forward. But I'm preparing to market like we did back in those years. Okay, so that's what I look for. Now, some of these technical traders, they've been saying the charts look healthy and everything right now, which is great to hear. They may have some other cycles that they're looking at, but I'll see if I can get one of those trend traders on here at some point. But that's what the big one for me that stands out is just going back to seasonals. And, folks, I expect we're going to establish our highs here over the next month or so, maybe two. Maybe if the U.S. weather, like Brett says, is volatile and hot this summer, hey, we might have some more rallies later on this summer. But, it's time will tell, of course, obviously. Yeah. So anyways, and then, so the percent sold for what month, for what year? Well, 2021 changed the game for everybody. Buyouts in 2021, the situations that farmers experienced in 2021, that changed it for everybody. So it's a very individual, personalized situation, because did you face a buyout by, how many thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars? That impacts now your plan moving forward. But, what I'll say is, again, I got to say it's individual. My plan, I'm still comfortable being half sold a crop here in the month of May. Pardon me. But you already heard what I'm using for strategies. That's not completely exposed out there. I've got some different risk management that I'm using. And so that's where it kind of comes in. I don't have a good answer for you, but I'll leave it at that, Rick. All right. My last question here for the mailbag for this week comes from Ryan. Great name. So Ryan he's a new grain buyer. Okay. And so he says, Ryan, what are 2 or 3 things you'd recommend for a young person to do better, to be a better grain buyer, pardon me. And then what are two or 3 things you'd recommend not doing as a grain buyer? And so I'm going to start with things to do to be a better grain buyer. Not that I'm the expert in this, but I did talk to a few farmers, and I did buy grain back in the day. But like for us on our farm, it's communication, okay? And I'm not talking about a stinking text message, okay? But it's about communication and building a relationship, okay? Yes, text messages are great at times, but if you have something important to share, or if you have something important to share, call me. Let's talk about it. Why is it important to you as a grain buyer? Tell me, and let's talk about it. If you have bad news, call me. All right. If it's something to do with an unload or something to do with something going on, just call. Communication is huge, in my opinion. Generic texts do not flatter me, where my name is entered at the top. I know it's a computer code program that did it. No, that's not going to do it for me. The second thing, if you can help the farm make a better decision, share that information. You don't have to be the expert. You don't have to know what the market's going to do tomorrow. None of us know. I don't know. Nobody knows. But if you have something, a piece of information that you view as valuable, share with us at the farm why it's valuable, and hey, maybe it helps us make a better decision. Okay. What else did I have here? I'll just double check. Yeah, I think, I'll leave it at that for now. Now, on the negative ones, so things not to do, and this happened to us the week before last, but don't make me feel small. Okay, as a farm, don't make me feel small. And so the other day, our P&H rep, they laughed at the targets that we put in for our farm on wheat. And they said that we were crazy, and why would you bother? Because those targets were not going to hit. Okay. Well, ding, ding, ding. We had the Price is Right music playing in the office because some of them struck. And even though you don't agree as a buyer with those targets, you don't have to make us feel small. Again, you don't know where the market's going. I don't know where the market's going, but it was part of a thought out plan that we had. and we put it together, and we decided to put those targets in. And hey, lo and behold, a few of them have hit. And hey, I think a few more are going to hit here in the next week or so. So, you know what? Just don't make us feel small. We have a plan. As a farm, we're talking about our plan, and we're using targets to execute that. Second one, pay me on time. Agfinity, right? But anyway, pay me on time. Huge. And be a very good communicator. Not that on the last day text me and say, hey, we're not paying you right now, but just pay on time. Okay. I think all farmers are going to agree to that one. A few came in from a few farmers as well. Don't tie seed and fertilizer to grain contracts. And they said, don't try to make me feel good about it either, where you're helping me out, air quotes. Don't tie seed and fert to grain contracts. Keep it separate. There's lots of companies out there, lots of different things going on. Just don't tie them together. It drives me bananas. That came from a grower. Don't ask me how many acres I'm growing and what crops. And actually, all farmers listening to this, don't share that information with the grain company. All they're doing, I did it. I had a budget. Where I had to enter the acres for farmers in my call list, right? A couple hundred farmers in my call list. And if I didn't, I got in trouble, right? Like I what do they call it? Performance improvement plan. Like, hey, where's all your acres? They want to know in each location, how many acres of canola, how many acres of wheat. You might sit here and say, hey, I'm just a small farmer and my numbers don't matter. Yeah, but they're phoning everybody. Okay. And they're rolling that all up into head office. Okay. And they're using that to their advantage. Now, if a grain company calls me and says, hey, we want your acres, I'm like, okay, great. Send me an email. And I'm going to put on here that you're agreeing to share all of the data that you collect with me as well. And they never do, right? They don't. So just, again, it drives farmers nuts when your grain buyer's asking you this, because remember, folks, you guys don't call us. Grain buyers don't phone us very often. And then you do to ask us what our acres are, along with 12 others. So we don't hear from you at all. And then finally it's like, hey, you need something from me? And it's my acres, and, have a good seeding. So anyways, those are a few. If you have any more, keep them coming. Ryan at whatthefuturespodcast.ca. That's my email. Let me know the positives. What did the great grain buyers do for you out there? Let's help Ryan out. He's new to it. He's doing a heck of a job north of Edmonton. So thanks for the email, pal. And I hope you had a great week buying grain as well. But keep them coming, the good and the bad about grain buyers, and we can help Ryan out. He's going to be the best grain buyer across the prairies. I can guarantee that. All right, so moving on to our next segment here. Everyone's been waiting for us to announce the winner of the week one Batalium winner from UPL, where, of course, UPL is going to give away a case of this each week in the month of May. And so last week we were asking, do you have to tank mix anything with Batalium? And the answer was no. It's basically 2 jugs in a box, covers 40 acres. You don't need to add anything else. Batalium is that easy product to use here for across the prairie. So no is the answer. And our winner of week one is Riley Wallace out of Unity, Saskatchewan. Congratulations, Riley. You are our week one winner. You texted in no. And congratulations. UPL is going to drop that off to you here sometime this month. Now, here's the cool thing. We get to keep it going. All right. We're going to keep going here for the next number of weeks. So this week's question, if you're ready, Batalium controls a broad spectrum of weeds, including wild oats, green and yellow foxtail, kochia, cleavers, and lamb's quarters. You need to identify 2 of these. Okay. 2 of these weeds. What does Batalium control? Identify 2 of them. I've already given them to you. The easiest thing to answer. You can text in your answer 1-855-606-1889. Or if you don't want to text, you can email Ryan at whatthefuturespodcast.ca. And of course, I'll be picking a winner next week. Again, identify 2 weeds that Batalium controls. Alrighty. Okay, eating your veggies. Now, I've got, first of all, last week I did mention, check your targets, right? And it doesn't take long to trigger some of them. And there we go. We had a lot of action with targets the last little while here. But for eating your veggies for this week, again, folks, I think I brought this up a couple weeks ago, but it's to get that first 2025 sale, or at least get that target out for 2025. And I'm talking about the fall of 2025. Okay. Now, I know there's some storylines here that are bullish. And do I think wheat can climb from today? 100%. Yes, I do. You don't have to do a lot, but start building that 2025 crop marketing plan. Get that target in for some wheat, some hard red, some CPS. There's some pricing opportunities out there. And we do have a variety of companies participating in this, G3 being one of them. But fall of 2025, get your wheat targets out there. Okay. I know it's busy on the farm this week, folks. Or this month. But we did see our yellow pea targets trigger at $12 in some areas. Of course, India has extended that duty-free portion on yellow peas into the fall. So now we're going to go fishing here a little bit more, and we're actually going to raise this up. I had to raise it up to about $13 for yellow peas just to see for a couple of weeks here and see what happens. Because yellow pea merchants, they don't have a lot to go off of, right? They can't use futures by any means. So targets are an effective way to kind of lead markets at times. But let's see what India's appetite is out there for new crop yellow peas. And let's go and bump that one up now to about $13. If you haven't done the $12 sale, I'd still encourage you to do that one, because as Chuck says, China's leaving the market right now. India's stepping in, but as of now, they're only stepped into the end of October. So, hey, it's perfect for us. Harvest your peas in August, deliver them all off the combine, send them over to India. Life's good. But we got some 12s done. Now let's do some 13s. Last thing, and I know start stop seeding is frustrating, but just take when you get a chance to recharge, if it's having the folks over in the shop or some family time, go for dinner, make sure you get that mental health break. And hey, if you can afford to, just take some time off during the week, even a few hours, to focus on a hobby or a nap or whatever it is to kind of get you recharged, because we know that you're under a tremendous amount of pressure to get the crop planted. We know it's a stressful time of year, and if you can, just try to set some time aside for yourself to get recharged and refocused for that next run, because you guys put in those big long days. And if you get a chance, it rains, recharge, get set for the next go. All right, we've made it to the end of the episode here. So just in closing, round one of our What the Futures playoff pool, Elite, they are a winner in round one. They scooped me actually on the last day of round one to take the lead. I was back in the lead now last time I checked. So Elite, that's my buddy Chris in Central Alberta. We're going to send him some What the Futures swag. So good job on your playoff pool. You're a round one winner. Of course, we've got the playlist on YouTube, What the Futures, #Plant24. My songs of the week, Truck Got Stuck by Corb Lund. And for the night shift, again, those late nights, I'm going with Pump It Up by Endor. Okay, those are both on the playlist. Let me know if you have a favorite. Hit me up on social media. Of course, we're on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel there. If you made it this far in the episode, thanks for hanging in. Follow us on X, follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, all that good stuff. I appreciate all the likes and the love out there. Have a good weekend, folks. We'll talk more grain markets next week. Lots going on. I'm out. Go Oilers.